I recently found out through a mutual friend that my wife of 20 years had been unfaithful for the last 20 years. I decided to end the marriage. My wife, 44, and I, 43, have been together for 20 years. We met at high school. She was in the last year, and I was in the penultimate year. Our relationship survived a long period of distance while I was at college and then at community college. We then lived together and built a life together. We got married in the summer after I finished college. Overall, our marriage has been great. However, I recently decided to get a divorce after finding out that she had been unfaithful to me with multiple men during those 20 years. Then she went off to college, and I finished high school and went to community college for a year. We ended up in the same city and going to the same college, and we've been together ever since. We got married the summer after I finished college, and overall it's been great. But I recently decided to get a divorce after finding out that she'd been seeing a bunch of other guys during those 2 years. During her first 2 years at college, she was away at university, and I finished high school and did a year at community college. We ended up in the same city and have been together ever since. We lived together and built a life together, got married in the summer after I finished college, and everything was great. But I recently decided to get a divorce after finding out that she had been seeing other people during those 2 years. Just after Christmas, we had a small reunion with a few of my wife's college friends. It was a cozy evening. We had a lot of laughs, and we reminisced over dinner. During the conversation, my wife casually mentioned that we met in high school. She didn't say that we were dating back then. She just said that we had known each other since high school. One of her old college roommates said how amazing it was. After Christmas, we had a small get-together with a few of my wife's college friends. It was a cozy evening, filled with laughter and reminiscing as we caught up over dinner and shared memories. During the conversation, my wife casually mentioned that we met in high school. She didn't clarify that we were dating back then, just that we had known each other since high school. One of her old college roommates exclaimed how remarkable it was that we met so young, had our wild college years, and still ended up together. I played along, jokingly saying I wasn't sure if my wife was as wild as I had been at that moment. The roommate began to share a story, but my wife abruptly cut her off, saying she felt uncomfortable. Her sudden reaction made me feel a bit uneasy. I decided to clarify things and mention that we actually started dating in high school and remained together. We'd been together since college, so it felt like we knew each other pretty well. But after that awkward silence, the rest of the evening felt pretty tense. Then, as we were leaving, one of my wife's other roommates suggested I should have an honest conversation with my wife about what really happened during her college years. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, so I asked my wife about what her roommate had hinted at. She just brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. I told her it was important that she be honest with me, but she just shrugged it off. Her dismissive attitude only made me more suspicious. When we got home, I decided to take a firm stand. I told her I was going to stay at my brother's house until she was ready to talk about what had really happened during her college years. The next day, she came over, visibly anxious. She finally admitted to sleeping with several guys during her first 2 years at college, but tried to make it seem like it wasn't a big deal because we were long distance and she didn't think our high school romance would last. This hit me like a ton of bricks. I pressed for more details, and she confessed that it was at least 10 different men, including at least 3 guys she'd slept with. She told me she'd introduced them to me as friends during my weekend visits, and that there was one guy she was still in contact with. I felt a lot of emotions, like anger, sadness, and betrayal. I knew our marriage couldn't survive this. I told her I wanted a divorce and would start the paperwork as soon as possible. I began the process on January 2nd. She kept saying it wasn't a big deal and that I should forget about it, but this only made me more sure that this wasn't just about it was about the lies and the disrespect that had spanned decades. My family, and most of her family, are telling me I shouldn't throw away my marriage over a few mistakes. They keep saying that everyone makes mistakes, and that I should forgive her for the sake of our long history together. But to me, this isn't just about a few mistakes. It's about a pattern of behavior that spanned years, cheating on me with multiple men for 2. I can't just overlook 2 years of cheating, no matter when it happened. The fact that she carried on seeing these guys, even introducing them as friends, is an unacceptable level of disrespect. Our children are 17 and 19, practically adults, and I believe they'll understand why I need to end the marriage. They've seen us as a loving couple, and I hope they realize that my decision is about preserving my self-respect. I feel like I'm losing my mind with the number of people telling me to overlook years of cheating and decades of lies. Everywhere I turn, I hear people urging me to forgive and forget to salvage what we built. They tell me I'm being unreasonable, that I should focus on the good times and the life we've shared. But how can I when every memory is now tainted by? All I can think about is the deceit, the lies, and the fact that she carried on seeing those other people she cheated with. How can I trust her again? How can I look at her the same way when she dismissed my feelings when I confronted her? I keep questioning myself, wondering if I'm overreacting, if I'm being too. I keep asking myself if I'm overreacting, if I'm being too harsh. But then I remember how I felt when she admitted to her affairs, how angry and betrayed I felt. I remember the nights spent wondering how she could introduce me to those men, how she could maintain those friendships without a hint of guilt. It's not something I can simply get over. It's a fundamental breach of trust that has shattered our marriage. Am I wrong for I'm not wrong for leaving, though? I feel like I'm fighting for my dignity, for my right to not be lied to not be disrespected in such a profound way. It's not about revenge or holding a grudge. It's about acknowledging that some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. I'm writing this because my wife and a few of her friends have been telling me it's normal to sleep with other people in a long-distance relationship. Distance relationships, and that I'm the odd one out for not doing the same. I felt like I was being gaslit and needed an outside perspective. Since we live in a state with a waiting period to finalize a divorce, I thought it would be wise to get some insight before things are set in stone. After hearing these comments, I see a handful of people agreeing that it's common to sleep around in long. I've heard from a few people that sleeping around is common in long-distance relationships, but they seem to be in the minority. During college, we saw each other a couple of weekends a month. I lived about 3 hours away from her college, so while it was long distance, it wasn't like we were separated by the entire country. We didn't go months without seeing each other. The 3 guys I met while she was at college were introduced to me during parties. These weren't formal introductions, just casual meetups at social gatherings. The topic of me being her boyfriend never really came up, so I've got no idea if they knew we were an item. One of these guys is still in our lives because he's married a mutual friend from college. He's not some secret contact she's been messaging on the side. He's someone we've both been in touch with regularly for years. After finding out about my wife's infidelity, I spoke to him a few times to understand his side. He told me he had no idea we were dating back then, and has since blocked my wife on social media out of respect for me. Some people have questioned how her college roommates I didn't understand the timeline at our wedding. The answer's in how we handled our marriage celebrations. My wife and I had a small ceremony with just close family in Texas, then a big party for our friends on the East Coast. We skipped the typical wedding reception traditions, where couples share details about how they met and their journey together. Because of this, her roommates never pieced together that we started dating before she went to college. They seemed to assume that we only started dating. We lived in the same city for a while, then we moved in together. This shows why they never questioned the timeline or suspected anything. I was open to therapy or trying to save the marriage. I genuinely believed that with some effort, we might be able to work through it. But her constant insistence that what she did was perfectly normal, and that I'm the one overreacting, has been too much for me to handle. She keeps telling me that sleeping with other people in a long-distance relationships are pretty common these days, and I'm starting to think I'm being a bit unreasonable. The only time she showed any remorse or even offered to make things up was when I started filing the divorce paperwork. But that was only for a short while, and now she's gone back to her original stance, saying she's right and I'm overreacting. This back and forth is getting exhausting. It's so common these days for couples to be miles apart, and I'm wondering if I'm overreacting. The only time she showed any remorse or even offered to sort things out was when I started filing the divorce paperwork. But that was only for a short time, and now she's back to her old ways, saying she's right and I'm overreacting. I feel like I'm being gaslit. It seems obvious to me that what she did was a big betrayal, but my wife and others are saying it's normal, and that I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Her dismissive attitude only adds to my confusion and frustration. I tried to tell her how much her infidelity hurt me, hoping I thought she'd get it, but she just dismisses how I feel and says it's overreacting to something trivial. It's like she's rewriting the rules of our relationship and expecting me to just go along with it. This constant invalidation of my emotions is infuriating. I feel like I'm being manipulated into doubting my own feelings. She doesn't seem to get how serious her actions are, and she tries to make it okay to be unfaithful, which just makes the rift between us worse. It's not just the cheating itself, but her inability to see why it's a big deal, and why I feel so betrayed. I need to protect my own mental and emotional well-being. I can't carry on in a marriage where my feelings are dismissed and my trust is shattered. I can't see a way forward with her not being sorry and insisting that I'm the one who's out of line. I'm not overreacting. I'm standing up for myself and my right to a respectful, honest relationship. I'm not getting a paternity test unless my kids ask for it themselves. I have no doubt about their biological connection to me, and even if a test showed otherwise, it wouldn't change how I feel about them. I love them more than anything, and my wife's infidelity doesn't change the fact that they've been my kids for 19 years. They will always be my kids, no matter what, until the day I stop breathing. We were definitely exclusively dating at the time. First of all, dating culture was a lot different 20 years ago, and exclusivity was pretty much the default for most people. There wasn't this openness to dating that there is now. The way of thinking about relationships or casual dating that's really common today. It was understood that if you were with someone, you were with them alone. Second, before she left for college, we had a long and difficult conversation about maintaining our relationship long distance. It wasn't an easy discussion, but she was adamant about staying together. She even joked that her dad would come after me if I started sleeping around with other girls at my school. That joke carried over. She was dead serious about us staying faithful to each other, and another clear sign of this was the situation with my senior prom. She couldn't attend because she was away at college, and when I suggested going with a platonic female friend, she got very upset. Her reaction showed how much our relationship meant to her, and reinforced the idea that we were exclusively together to avoid hurting her feelings. I ended up skipping my prom and spent the night with a friend instead. A lot of weight, showing how serious she was about us staying faithful to each other. Another clear sign was the situation with my senior prom. She couldn't attend because she was away at college, and when I suggested going with a platonic female friend, she got very upset. Her reaction showed how much our relationship meant to her, and reinforced the idea that we were exclusively together to avoid hurting her feelings. I ended up skipping my prom and spent the night hanging out with her instead. While we might not have explicitly used the word exclusive, all these reasons, combined with the nature of our relationship before she left for college, made it clear that we were committed to each other. The expectation of fidelity was implicit in our actions and discussions. I followed up with a friend who suggested I should have an honest conversation with my wife. She revealed that 10 guys would be on the low end and mentioned I spent the night with her instead. We didn't use the word exclusive, but all the reasons we had given, and the nature of our relationship before she left for college, made it clear that we were committed to each other. We were acting and talking in a way that made it obvious we were being faithful. I spoke to a friend who said I should have an honest conversation with my wife. She said there was at least one pregnancy scare during those years, which I didn't know about. To be honest, the number of guys isn't the main issue for me. What really matters is that my wife seems completely incapable of understanding why her actions were wrong, and why I feel so deeply betrayed. It would make a huge difference if she showed any genuine desire to fix this, but she hasn't. Throughout our conversations, she has consistently dismissed my feelings, telling me I had no idea about the pregnancy scare. The number of guys isn't the main issue for me. What really matters is that my wife seems incapable of understanding why her actions were wrong, and why I feel so betrayed. It would make a huge difference if she showed any desire to fix this, but she hasn't. In our conversations, she's consistently dismissed my feelings, telling me I'm overreacting to what she considers normal behavior. She hasn't expressed any regret or consideration for the hurt she caused until she realized I was serious about filing for divorce. Only then did she get defensive and angry, but even then, it was clear her concern was more about the consequences than about my feelings. She didn't show any remorse. She didn't offer to fix things or suggest how we could work through this until I had already started. I told her I had a lawyer, and that the paperwork had been sent to her. I wasn't interested in repairing our relationship. I just wanted to deal with the damage. This made me realize that she doesn't understand how serious her betrayal is. It's not just about the affair, but also about her not caring about my feelings or our marriage. Her attitude made it obvious that I had to move forward with the divorce. I think we can manage co-parenting. The paperwork told her I got a lawyer. It wasn't about fixing our relationship, it was about damage control. This made me think she doesn't understand how serious her betrayal is. It's not just about the affair, but also about her not caring about how I feel in our marriage. She was so dismissive, especially with such a serious issue, so I had to move forward with the divorce. I think we can manage co-parenting our kids, who are older, and I've been saving for their college and post-high school expenses for years, so custody and financial issues shouldn't be a major hurdle. We're both financially stable and earn good incomes. I'm open to therapy if she's willing, but at this point it feels more about becoming effective Our kids are all grown up, and I've been saving for their college and post-high school expenses for years, so I don't think custody or money issues will be an issue. We're both doing well financially and earn good salaries. I'm open to therapy if she's up for it, but right now it seems more like we want to become effective co-parents and find some kind of closure, rather than saving our marriage. I've taken steps to move forward with the separation. I hired a lawyer who wrote an intent to separate document and sent it to her via certified mail. This isn't an official divorce document filed with the state. It's more of a preliminary step, ensuring she has the opportunity to hire her own lawyer if she wants to. I'm trying to get a divorce. I've hired a lawyer to draft some documents to show that I want to separate, and I've sent them to her via certified mail. This isn't an official divorce. It's just a way of making sure she has the chance to hire her own lawyer if she wants to. If she doesn't accept, the divorce process will probably take several months. I'm not fully moved out yet. I'm staying with my brother while I figure out a more permanent living situation. As for the timeline, I had dinner with her friends on the 26th. That night, I went to my brother's house to cool off and give her some space to think about things over the next 5 days. We had a few chats, and it was obvious she didn't think she'd done anything wrong. If she'd shown any remorse, regret, or basic consideration for my feelings, I might have reconsidered and waited, but her dismissive attitude left me with no choice. So, I found a divorce lawyer, and we quickly filled out the standard intent to separate agreements, which were sent the same. We had a few chats, and it was obvious that she didn't think she'd done anything wrong. If she'd shown any remorse, regret, or basic consideration for my feelings, I might have reconsidered and waited. But her dismissive attitude left me with no choice, so I found a divorce lawyer. We quickly filled out the standard intent to separate agreements, which were sent on the same day. Even now, we're not legally divorced, and I'm not sure if there's an official legal concept of separation in my state. I've made it clear that this process is happening, and I've started the necessary steps to move forward. Update 1. Let's dive into what I discovered about her college years. After several counseling sessions with my wife and conversations with 2 of her former roomies told me that they had suspected something was up back in college, and that it probably involved cheating. My wife had told them that we both had some wild times in college, but we worked things out before we got married, so they never felt the need to bring it up. The roommate who pulled me one of the guys I went to college with was particularly awkward. He was pretty uncomfortable with the fact that my wife hadn't ever talked to me about it, and felt I deserved to know about the guy she was seeing. It turns out that the introductions to some of these guys weren't intentional. One of the guys she slept with ended up dating and eventually marrying one of our mutual friends from college. This was the guy she remained in contact with in our counseling sessions. My wife initially tried to shift the blame onto me, suggesting that I had pushed her into those situations. However, she has since acknowledged that it was wrong. When I visited her during college, she often planned for us to stay in a room or hang out alone, but I wanted to experience college parties as I missed out on that during high school and college, so I wanted to experience it. She didn't expect me to meet the guys she'd been with, but they were often at these parties, and she felt she couldn't avoid it. I still think it's really disrespectful, but it's less bad than if she'd intentionally introduced me to them. The whole situation has been a bit of a complicated web of half-truths and omissions. She didn't go on about it during high school and college, but she did expect me to meet the guys she'd been with. They were often at parties, and she felt she couldn't avoid it. I still think it's really disrespectful, but it's less bad than if she'd deliberately shown them to me. The whole situation has been a bit of a mix of truths and lies, which makes it all the more difficult to process. Her friends suspected, but didn't do anything, and my wife managed to keep up this front for years. Most of our therapy sessions have been about why I see her infidelity as a big betrayal, while she doesn't initially see her actions as a big deal. She said none of these guys were in relationships with her, so they were just one-night stands or friends with benefits. She didn't see it as a big deal, since they weren't romantic relationships. From my perspective, the nature of the relationships was irrelevant. We never agreed that this behavior was okay. In fact, she had actively discouraged me from doing the same. The double standard was glaring and added to my sense of betrayal. As we delved deeper into this issue over the course of 2 therapy sessions, and after she consulted with some friends, my wife began to see things differently. She now acknowledges that her actions were a breach of our trust and the foundation of our relationship. This new shared understanding has allowed us to discuss the situation more openly and honestly, moving from heated arguments to productive conversations. This shift in our dynamic gives me some hope for our future as co-parents. While it might feel like saving our marriage is impossible, talking honestly about our past can help us build a healthier relationship in the future. This is really important for our well-being. It's also important for our kids, and for dealing with the tricky stuff that comes with being a couple. Parenting effectively now. Here's why I'm 100% committed to getting a divorce. 2 big things came to light that made it clear I needed to end the marriage. About 10 years ago, we hit a rough patch and went through a period of almost 2 years without any intimacy. She mentioned that our physical relationship was becoming monotonous, so I tried to bring some excitement into it. Nothing extreme, just some light roleplay and items you'd find at a novelty store. However, so it turns out she's got some kind of thing about some of the stuff that happened to her at college, which she won't talk about. She wanted me to recreate the experiences, but when I did, it made her feel weird and guilty because it reminded her of other guys she'd been with. The fact that she says these experiences were meaningless, but they still affect our marriage, tells me they were more significant than she's willing to admit. Also, she confessed to flirting with co-workers during business trips since the pandemic ended, although she claims nothing physical happened. It did progress to the point where she went on a date with one of her male colleagues. For me, that was the last straw. These revelations made me realize that past experiences were still affecting our present, despite her claims otherwise. The second issue made I was pretty much done for. The second issue made it clear that she was willing to cross boundaries again, even after everything we had been through. These 2 factors made it impossible for me to see any hope for salvaging our marriage. We've told our kids that we're getting a divorce. We explained to them that it stemmed from some bad decisions made during college, decisions that we've been unable to move past. During the conversation, my 19-year-old, it was obvious that she was willing to cross boundaries again, even after everything we had been through. These 2 things together made it impossible for me to see any hope for our marriage. We have told our children that we are getting a divorce. We explained to them that it was because of some bad decisions made during college, decisions that we've been unable to move past. During the conversation, my 19-year-old, who is currently in college, directly asked if I had been unfaithful to my wife while she was away at school. This question caught my wife off guard, but she bravely admitted to our children that she was the one who cheated. We have both agreed to refrain from sharing any more details with the kids. It's essential to protect them from the more painful aspects of our past. I reassured them that, despite the separation, both of us remain fully committed to being there for them. I emphasized that we are in therapy to ensure we handle the divorce in the best possible way for our family's well-being. I also made it clear to the kids that they can talk to us or a therapist about how they're feeling, and I'll totally support them. I want them to know they can express their feelings and seek help without any hesitation. It's crucial for them to understand that their emotional health is a top priority for both of us, and we're doing everything we can to navigate this difficult time together as a family. We've begun discussions. We've also started talking to a mediator to figure out the best way to go about the divorce. If things don't change, it looks like we can part ways amicably. We're both doing well financially, we don't have any major debts, and our kids are older, so custody isn't a big concern. The past few months have been tough, but I'm managing. I'm actually thankful that my last post got so much attention. It validated my feelings and pushed me to seek counseling with my wife. To be fair, my 19-year-old daughter has had her fair share of difficult relationships. She's been hurt by boyfriends who either cheated on her or abruptly left her for someone else. Given her past experiences with untrustworthy men, it's understandable why her initial thought might be that I was the one who cheated. Adding to her suspicion is the fact that I was the one who left the house. In her eyes, seeing her father leave the family home might have seemed like an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. Her experiences have understandably made her feel insecure about our relationship. I'm not too worried about the narrative here. My wife hasn't said anything negative about me to our kids, and she's even admitted to flirting and cheating recently. We're both financially stable, free of major debts, and our kids are older, so custody isn't a major concern. The past few months have been tough, but I'm managing. I'm actually thankful that my last post got so much attention. It validated my feelings and pushed me to seek counseling. To be fair, my 19-year-old daughter has had her share of difficult relationships. She's been hurt by boyfriends who either cheated on her or abruptly left her for someone else. Given her past experiences with untrustworthy men, it's understandable why her initial thought might be that I was the one who cheated. Adding to her suspicion is the fact that I was the one who left. In her eyes, seeing her father leave the family home might have seemed like an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. Her experiences have understandably shaped her perspective, making it easier for her to believe that I could be at fault when cheating came about. My wife made it clear that she was the one who was being unfair. To be honest, I'm not that worried about the story. As far as I know, my wife hasn't said anything bad about me to our kids. Also, she recently admitted to flirting and cheating, so she's even said she wants to file for an amicable divorce after just 6 weeks and 3 counseling sessions. It seemed she was more prepared to move on than I was. This makes the logistical aspects of the divorce easier, but it does sting a bit to see her having an easier time walking away from a 20-year marriage was still going strong. I'm pretty sure she's already got a new partner. When we met with the equitable divorce mediator, she made it clear that we're still married until the divorce is final, and that any cheating before then could mess up our friendly divorce deal. I found that a bit ironic, given that our marriage was still going strong after 20 years. I've got a feeling that my soon-to-be ex is annoyed about the whole infidelity thing. I mean, she mentioned it in our meeting with the divorce mediator, and I think it's pretty ironic considering our divorce is all about that. I'm doing my best to deal with it, though. I've been seeing a therapist on my own, and I'm trying to get my head around it. As for where I'm living, I'm kind of stuck in the guest room, but I'm hoping that'll change soon. Divorce is all about infidelity, right? But my soon-to-be ex was pretty annoyed when we started talking about it. I also think that the fact that I'm currently staying in the guest room might be getting in the way of her moving on. At the end of the day, I'm doing my best to deal with the end of our marriage. I've been seeing a therapist on my own, as well as in sessions with my wife, to help me cope. I'm mentally preparing myself for the possibility of meeting up with the colleague she only dated again. But I'm hopeful that I'll find a new place and move out before the divorce is finalized. If everything goes smoothly with the mediator, we should be divorced by summer. I'll have my own place, and she can just date whoever she wants. Update 2. My wife and I have finalized our divorce and everything is official. We managed to have an uncontested, amicable divorce with minimal disagreements. Our lawyers collaborated to draft the plan through mediation, and a judge signed off on it a few weeks ago. Ultimately, the divorce process was straightforward. The only significant complication was related to our 17-year-old son, who was set on staying with me because of the breakdown in his relationship with my ex. Update 2. My wife and I have finalized our divorce and everything is official. We had an amicable, uncontested divorce with minimal disagreements. Our lawyers collaborated to draft the plan through mediation, and a judge signed off on it a few weeks ago. The divorce process was straightforward. The only significant complication was related to our 17-year-old, who was adamant about staying with me due to the deterioration of their relationship with my ex-wife. Initially, my wife resisted, ready to challenge the uncontested divorce. However, our son made it clear that she could either allow him a few months to process and rebuild their relationship or force him to stay with her until he turned 18 and risk never seeing him again. Although I felt my son's stance was a bit harsh, it did prompt my wife to back down. We moved forward. My wife was initially set against the divorce, but our son made it clear that he could either wait a few months to rebuild the relationship or force her to stick around until he turned 18, at which point he'd never see her again. I thought my son was a bit harsh, but it did get my wife to back down. We agreed that I'd have primary physical custody until his birthday later this year. During this time, I've been encouraging my son to keep an open mind about getting back together with his mother. She did care for and love him for 17 years, even though she did some pretty harsh stuff before he was born. As the divorce proceedings got going, I noticed my son spending more and more time with my ex. I've been working on getting my son to open up to his mom again, even though she did some pretty dodgy stuff before he was born. She looked after him for 17 years and loved him, so I'm hopeful that they'll get back together. It's been tough on us all, but I reckon that they'll get their bond back. We split our retirement fund and investments down the middle. My wife really liked the house, but I didn't, so she kept it and most of the furniture. To even things out, she took out a mortgage to pay me back for half of the equity and half of the estimated replacement value of the furniture. Most of our other stuff is. We had no problem splitting up our belongings. I kept my car, and we split the rest. We divided our personal items, like my music gear and her hobby equipment, as well as clothing and personal effects. For anything that was harder to divide, we agreed to sell it and split the profits. Thankfully, we had already documented most of our valuable items and electronics for an insurance rider we added to our home insurance a few years ago, which made this process easier. Things have been going well for me personally. Both of my kids spend most of we had no problem splitting up our belongings. I kept my car, and she kept hers, and we divided up our personal stuff like my music equipment and her hobby equipment, as well as clothes and personal effects. Anything else that was more tricky, like our furniture, we agreed to sell and split the profits. Luckily, we had already documented most of our valuable items and electronics for an insurance rider we added to our home insurance a few years ago, which made this process easier. Things have been going really well for me personally. Both of my kids spend most of their time at my place, and we have kept up a close relationship, which was my biggest concern during the divorce. I'm really happy and grateful that this bond remains strong. I've moved into a new house that I truly love, a place that feels like a fresh start, in a nod to my midlife crisis. I swapped my old minivan for a sleek Lexus LC550, a decision that has brought a surprising amount of joy. On another positive note, a woman at work, someone from a different department, so we don't work directly together, invited me out. When I asked her out for coffee, I was honest with her and said I'm not ready to date just yet. She was cool about it, and even offered to wait for me, saying she'd be up for going out with me when I'm ready. I was pretty surprised by that, but in a good way. She's super smart and has a great sense of humor, and our jobs are separate enough that there's no awkwardness at work. My ex and I are still going to couples counseling, but now it's more about finishing up our marriage and making sure we can co-dash. These sessions have been really helpful for getting through everything and keeping things positive, even though things haven't been easy. They've also shown that divorce was the right call. It's become clear from our chats that my wife started dating as soon as the divorce process started, which made it obvious that whatever love we had was already fading. I'm pretty sure the colleague she said was just a friend even dropped her off at our recent session, which was a bit of a surprise. I wasn't too upset about that, which shows that I was ready to move on from the marriage. Healing from the betrayal will take time, but I feel like I'm making good progress and can confidently say that the divorce was the right choice. I've shed more tears in the past 4 months than in the last 20 years combined, but for the past month, I've genuinely felt good about myself for the first time in a long while. I'm enjoying my newfound independence, staying busy, helping my 17-so-year I'm getting ready for college in the fall, and I'm excited to go on a coffee date with a smart, funny woman in a month or two. My divorce taught me the value of honest communication. Looking back, I wish we had been more transparent with each other from the start. If we'd been honest with each other from the beginning, it could have prevented some of the pain we both ended up feeling. I'm definitely going to remember that. My kids are getting ready for college in the fall, and they're excited about going on a coffee date with a smart, funny woman in a month or two. Our divorce taught me the value of honest communication. Looking back, I wish we had been more transparent with each other from the start. Honesty could have prevented some of the pain we both ended up feeling. It's a lesson I'll carry forward in all my future relationships, romantic or otherwise. Most importantly, I've discovered the strength within myself to rebuild and move on despite the heartache. I've started to feel genuinely good about myself again. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.